While everyone else is collecting friends like they're collecting trading cards, there's someone else. Quiet. Strategic. They've had the same three friends since college, and they're not trying to expand. Meanwhile, their classmates are networking furiously, adding connections, going to every social event, spreading themselves thin across 100 shallow relationships. But psychologists have discovered something fascinating about these inner circle keepers, and it completely contradicts what society keeps telling us about friendship and success. Here's the thing: you've probably been told that your network is your net worth, that more connections equal more opportunities, that popularity is a form of currency. But what if the people who refuse to play that game actually understand something the rest of us don't? Stay with me, because what we're about to uncover reveals that having a small circle isn't loneliness, it's actually strategy. And it's written into your brain differently than you think. You know them. They're the ones who politely decline the group hangout. Not because they're depressed or antisocial, but because they'd rather spend quality time with their core people than spread themselves across dozens of surface level connections. When you text them about a party, they ask if their close friends will be there. When everyone's talking about the 20 people they met over the weekend, they mention having one really deep conversation instead. These are the circle keepers, and their brains might actually be processing friendship differently than yours. For years, psychologists labeled this behavior as introversion, social anxiety, or even social selectivity. But there's a more specific term that's gaining traction: cognitive scarcity management. When someone keeps their circle small, they're not rejecting people out of fear or judgment. They're making a conscious or unconscious calculation about their mental and emotional resources. Think about it. Maintaining relationships requires energy, not just time, but genuine emotional bandwidth. Every new friendship you cultivate demands attention, memory, emotional investment, and reciprocal care. Your brain has limits on how many people you can genuinely know at a deep level. This isn't pessimism, it's neuroscience. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar discovered something called Dunbar's number, which suggests humans can maintain approximately 150 stable relationships. But here's the critical part: that number becomes significantly smaller when you're talking about meaningful, emotionally intimate relationships. For true confidants, the people you trust with real problems, most humans can only maintain somewhere between 3 and 5 people. Beyond that, the relationships become increasingly superficial. And for people who keep small circles, they're not fighting this biological reality. They're accepting it, maybe even optimizing for it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. People who keep small circles actually operate on a different social preference model than those who maintain large networks. Psychologists call this the quality versus quantity preference spectrum. But it's not just about preference, it's about how their brains prioritize information and relationships. Research on attachment styles has shown something surprising. People who are securely attached, meaning they felt genuinely understood and supported in childhood, are statistically more comfortable with smaller circles. They don't need external validation through a large network because they internalize security earlier. They're not filling an emotional void with quantity. They're deepening the ones that matter. But there's another type. Type 1, the selective extrovert. These people could have large circles if they wanted. They're charming, socially skilled, genuinely enjoyable. But they actively choose small circles because they've learned that depth beats breadth. They've done the math on energy expenditure and satisfaction, and they've decided that 4 real friends provide more life satisfaction than 40 acquaintances. They're not antisocial, they're efficient. They've optimized for what actually makes them happy, and they're willing to sacrifice status games to get it. Type 2, the authentic introvert. These people keep small circles, partly because social interaction drains their battery faster. But it's not social anxiety. It's more like energy economics. They have genuine friendships, but they need recovery time between social interactions. The quality of those friendships is exceptional because they only cultivate relationships where the effort feels reciprocal and the person genuinely interests them. They're not missing parties because they're afraid of people. They're protecting their mental and emotional reserves to show up fully for the people who matter. Here's the psychological difference that matters. Extroverts with large circles are often externally motivated. They're maintaining relationships to feel connected, to create opportunity, to have options. People with small circles tend toward internal motivation. Their relationships exist because of genuine compatibility, shared values, or deep history. One is still controlled by social availability and external validation. The other is driven by authentic preference and internal stability. Studies on self disclosure and intimacy have shown that people with smaller social circles actually have deeper conversations, more reciprocal support systems, and higher quality interactions overall. They're not just fewer people, they're different people. People selected for actual compatibility rather than proximity or utility. They know things about their close friends that people with large networks never discover about anyone. They're invested in the full story, not just the highlight reel. But why would brains evolve toward this? Plot twist. Your brain is probably wired for this smaller circle preference from the start. And modern society has been fighting your natural inclination for the last 100 years. Let's talk about survival for a moment. For 99% of human history, humans lived in small groups. Not because we lacked the ability to expand, but because small groups were more functional. Your ancient ancestors' survival depended on a tight unit of people they could completely trust. The 5 people around the fire who would help you hunt, defend you from threats, care for you when you were sick, and remember your needs without you having to ask. Expanding beyond that tight circle was actually dangerous. You didn't know if that stranger would betray you. You didn't know their patterns or reliability. Your brain evolved to become intimate with a small number of people because that intimacy created the safety net that kept you alive. It wasn't a limitation, it was an adaptation. Your brain got really good at reading people you'd known a long time, anticipating their needs, building trust through consistency rather than quantity. There's even genetic evidence for this. The serotonin transporter gene and the oxytocin receptor gene both influence how socially driven you are and how many relationships you maintain. Some people genuinely have genetic predisposition toward larger networks. Their brains produce more dopamine from novel social interactions. Others have neurotypes that support smaller, deeper ones. Their brains reward consistency and deep understanding. Neither is superior. They're different survival strategies, both of which have kept humans alive across millennia. And here's what's wild. For most of human history, people with smaller circles weren't losing status. They were respected as the core members of the tribe, the person everyone came to with important decisions, the person whose judgment was trusted implicitly. They weren't on the social margins, they were the foundation. The elders, the counselors, the people with real authority didn't need to know everyone. They needed to know a few people very well, and everyone needed to trust them. But then, something shifted. Capitalism entered the building, and suddenly, your network became your net worth. Networking became a skill you had to develop. Social capital became an economy. LinkedIn was invented to monetize your relationships. Conferences and mixers became status symbols, and suddenly, the biologically natural preference for small circles started feeling like a weakness instead of wisdom. People started asking not, do I enjoy this person, but does this person advance my career? Relationships became instrumental. And if you weren't playing that game, if you were still operating on that ancient, I need 3 to 5 people I completely trust frequency, people started saying something was wrong with you. But research has quietly contradicted this. Studies from Stanford and Harvard have shown that people with smaller, stronger social networks have lower stress, better immune response, and higher life satisfaction than those maintaining extensive weak ties. Your body knows what your brain refuses to accept. You were built for this. The cardiovascular system of someone with deep friendships actually functions better than someone constantly managing shallow ties. But here's where we need to get uncomfortable. Having a small circle isn't automatically noble or enlightened. The motivations matter enormously, and they're rarely pure. On one hand, People who genuinely curate small circles report higher satisfaction with their friendships. They experience less FOMO because they're not tracking 100 different social events. They're not performing for a massive audience. Their relationships don't require constant maintenance. They're built on depth and history. There's something deeply satisfying about having people who know your full story, not just the public highlight reel. When you invest in fewer relationships, those relationships can actually invest in you. You're not a name in a contact list, you're a presence in their life. On the other hand, and this is the uncomfortable part, humans are social creatures. We evolved in communities. And sometimes, people who keep small circles are actually avoiding the challenging work that comes with diverse relationships. Diverse friendships stretch you. They force you to understand different perspectives, navigate conflict across value systems, extend empathy to people who aren't like you. Small circles can become echo chambers where you're never challenged to grow. They can become safe spaces that start to feel like boxes. A 2021 study found that people with moderately sized friendship circles, roughly 5 to 15 close friends who interact with different social groups, actually reported higher resilience and life satisfaction than either extreme. The people with just 3 close friends were satisfied, yes, but they were also more vulnerable. If something happened to one person, their whole system destabilized. If they had conflict with one friend, there was nowhere else to go. The people with 50 acquaintances and no depth felt chronically lonely despite constant social activity. They were busy but not connected. But here's the most uncomfortable truth. Many people who claim to have small circles are actually using it as an excuse. They tell themselves they're selective when they're actually just afraid. They call it valuing quality over quantity when what they're really doing is avoiding the risk of rejection that comes with broader connection. They've built their entire identity around being the type of person who doesn't need many friends when what they're actually doing is protecting themselves from the vulnerability that real friendship requires. They've created a story where their isolation is wisdom, their distance is discernment, and their loneliness is integrity. If your first thought when someone suggests expanding your circle is that most people are too shallow or not worth your time, congratulations. You're not actually selecting, you're avoiding. You've dressed up your fear in the language of standards. And here's the thing about that. The moment you start judging people as categorically unworthy, you've lost the plot. Wisdom isn't dismissal. Wisdom is knowing which people genuinely matter to you and why. The uncomfortable question. If you lived in a world where your small circle didn't make you feel special or different, would you still want it? If having few friends was completely normal and unstigmatized, if everyone did it, would you still choose it? If the answer is no, you've been performing this whole time. You haven't been curating, you've been protecting yourself while calling it strategy. Here's what the psychology actually reveals, and it's more nuanced than either side wants to admit. People don't keep small circles because they're better at choosing people or more evolved in their understanding of friendship. They keep small circles because their particular combination of attachment style, energy levels, values, and neurotype makes that work. Some brains are highly tuned to social signals. What's valued, what's trending, what creates broad belonging. These people aren't shallow. They're actually attuned to social information in a way that makes large networks feel natural and even necessary. They can remember someone's name after meeting them once. They can navigate complex social dynamics. They actually enjoy the work of connection. That's not inferior. That's a different operating system. Other brains are calibrated toward depth and consistency. They need fewer but more meaningful connections to feel secure. They value the known quantity over the new possibility. They get actual joy from very close relationships in a way that diffuse connections don't provide. These people aren't better. They're just differently wired. Their neurotype is built for intensity, not breadth. The real test isn't whether you have a small circle. The real test is whether you're being honest about why. Here are the questions that separate actual preference from avoidance. Do your close friends feel like home, or do they feel like safety from the world? There's a difference. Home is where you want to be. Safety is where you hide. Are you with these people because you're drawn to them or because they're familiar? When you turn down social invitations, is it because you genuinely prefer other activities or because socializing feels depleting in a way that makes you anxious? One is preference, the other is avoidance. Can you talk about people outside your circle with genuine curiosity, or do you mostly talk about what's wrong with them? Curiosity is wisdom. Judgment is fear dressed up as standards. Do you initiate contact with your inner circle because you miss them, or because you're checking boxes to maintain the relationships you've decided are acceptable? One is genuine, the other is performance. The hardest question. If everyone suddenly had a small circle, if it became the social norm, would you still want yours? If the answer is yes, you're genuine. If you suddenly wanted to expand, you were never actually curating. You were just being contrarian, choosing the opposite simply because it was opposite. So here's what the research actually tells us about people who keep their circles small. They're not automatically emotionally intelligent or shallow. They're not necessarily secure or damaged. They're just operating with different social settings. Their brains might have lower novelty seeking genes, meaning new people aren't as neurologically rewarding as they are for others. Their attachment histories might have taught them to invest deeply rather than broadly. Their energy patterns might require more solitude to recharge. Their values might prioritize depth over access. Their past experiences might have taught them that quality truly does beat quantity. All of this is real. All of this is valid. But none of these things make them superior to people who maintain larger networks. The people who sustain extensive friendship groups aren't shallow for valuing connection and community. They're not chasing validation if they genuinely feel energized by diverse interactions. They're not performing if they actually find the social navigation pleasurable. Different brains, different needs, different optimization strategies. That's it. The problem only starts when either side thinks their way is better. When people with large networks mock smaller circles as fearful or antisocial, when people with small circles mock broader connections and as desperate or inauthentic, when we turn a neurological difference into a moral judgment. Because here's what nobody wants to admit: we're all making trade offs. The person with 5 close friends is optimizing for depth, but potentially sacrificing resilience and growth. The person with 50 friends is optimizing for connection and opportunity, but potentially sacrificing genuine intimacy. There's no perfect answer. There's only the answer that matches your actual wiring. So the real question isn't whether you should have a small circle or a large one. The real question is, are you choosing what actually fits your psychology, or are you performing what you think you should be? Are you curating your circle based on genuine preference and values, or based on fear and a story you've told yourself about who you are? Are you accepting your natural wiring, or are you fighting it while pretending it's a choice? Let me know in the comments. And if you're someone with a genuinely small circle, tell me, what made you choose that? Was it always a choice, or did it become who you are? Did it start as preference and become identity, or did it start as protection and become identity? Don't forget to subscribe or join the channel. It genuinely helps, and I appreciate it whether you're the type to maintain 100 connections or 3. Whether you're someone who lights up in a room full of strangers or someone who needs to recover in silence after one social event. Your preference is valid. Your wiring is valid. Your choice matters. Check out this next video if you want to understand why some people feel exhausted by crowds while others feel energized by them. It's all about sensory processing, introversion, extroversion at the neurological level, and it explains way more than you think.